Those who are outside the continent, who have been exploiting this continent for years, now they are seeing positive development. And in order to counter that, they want to work on the psychology of the African people and make the African people to consider their leaders is bad, and then start to behave like that. And then in the process undermines what is happening in the continent. So Africans deserve the best when they are in the continent. There's a situation whereby you might find some Europeans enter some of our countries easier than Africans. That need to be addressed. Africans must feel comfortable in their own continent.
Thank you so much for making time for this interview and for welcoming us into your beautiful country, Namibia. For the benefit of my viewers, could you please introduce yourself? Tell me about you. Who is Honorable Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah?
I'm Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah, a village-born Namibian girl. Born and grew up in Namibia before the country got its independence. So I have experienced both the colonial era as well as the independence. And both eras have their dynamics. The colonial era's dynamics is the fight for independence, which, like all young people of my age, have to join and fought for our country. And when independence was achieved, like the people of my generation of the time, we all set ourselves for the road of building the country in terms of economic and social development. And that is what I am.
Could you please walk us through the journey that brought you to where you are currently?
The professional journey is linked to what I have also said earlier, whether that could be called a profession. The time when I was a student, and that was the time when Namibia was not independent, there were very choices when it comes to profession. It's either you become a teacher, people especially for the blacks, or you become a nurse, or you become a pastor. And due to lack of schools, you find that many might become, particularly teachers, unqualified. And I fell in that category, that when I completed only Form 2 and not having space to go to Form 3, I ended up teaching Standard 3 at the school where I completed my Form 3. And of course, as I'm doing that, I was also involved in the political activity, if that could also be seen as a profession, which I don't think it is, but it's an activity. And due to my involvement in the political activities, things just become so difficult to continue being in the country. So after my release from prison, due to my political activities, though I had continued to teach at the same school where I was teaching, it was not easy because the sentence I was given was 3 years suspension, and which means you should not be involved in political activities, which become extremely difficult for me because I can't not be participating when I see what is happening in my country. So the only option, I left the country in 1974, went into exile as a SWAPO member. That time when I left, I was the chairperson of the SWAPO Youth League in Ovamboland. Now it's divided in different regions, but that time we called chairman of the SWAPO Youth League in Ovamboland. So I left the country 74, joined my colleagues, my comrades in exile in Zambia, where I was given an assignment to be administrator in the office of the SWAPO Secretary for Administration, and later become the SWAPO Deputy Chief Representative in Central Africa, based in Zambia, and then later become the Chief Representative in the same office. That was 76. And then 1980, I was transferred to Dar es Salaam as a SWAPO Chief Representative. But between me going to Dar es Salaam and Lusaka, I had a 1-year course training at the Lenin High Komsomol School in Moscow on the work and the practice of young Komsomol, younger youth league, communist youth. So that is my profession. And just 3 years before Namibia got independence, I was given an opportunity and then went to study in the UK at Keele University, where I graduated with a master's degree on diplomatic studies. And before that, I did a diploma on international relations. And in the course, I have been also serving as a member of the Central Committee of SWAPO. And when Namibia got independence in 1990, I was in the shadow cabinet as a deputy minister of foreign affairs. And then from there, I was appointed as Director General of the Department of Women Affairs, which later was turned into the Ministry of Women Affairs and Child Welfare. And I was the first minister to set up that office. And then I was transferred to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And then again transferred to the Ministry of Environment and Tourism until 2012, December, when I was then appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs. And when the current president took over in 2015, I was then appointed a Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. So that's the professional journey, if that's what you call a professional journey.
Yes. From your account, you went through a lot in the hands of the apartheid leaders, put in prison, everything. A lot of people would have given up. What kept you in the fight? Why did you continue the fight? Why didn't you give up?
No, you cannot be discouraged because you are seeing what is around you. The treatment that you are getting is very inhuman. I'm from a large family. We are 14 children in my family. The girls who were in the majority, 9 of them, and then our boys. We normally stay home and be with our parents. And we have specific 1, 2 who used to go for contract labor system. And when they come home, there is nothing to offer. So you could really see the hardship. So there is no way you could really sit idle. And the leaders of SWAPO who were that time mobilizing us or making us understand the situation, they were really focused. If I talk about people like Kahumba Kandola, you might not know him because I'm talking about the Namibian heroes. And those are the people who really motivated some of us because we have been seeing them. So it was just a motivation and a strength. And I was so convinced that definitely Namibia need to be independent. And we were reading, we were listening. I remember one of the book that I liked very much, which helped me, I say. I had a book on Mau Mau. Mau Mau is a group of resistance in Kenya. And I read that book. Of course, I lost it because when I was arrested and then they came and searched my room, they found the book, which even made the situation worse. So they took it. So, and we were listening to radios like BBC, Deutsche Welle. So all these are the things that we should be telling you. And then the history of Africa, the slavery, which you are reading in the books, how the Africans went to the diaspora, what is happening. And you also have people who are talking about this situation. You are reading them. Of course, the reading material were not very accessible, but we find ways of getting information. And SWAPO had a radio, which is the Voice of Namibia, which was broadcasting from Tanzania. And sometimes we catch it, and then you listen to it. And then discussing as students. And I was also at a mission school, you see, of the Anglican Church. And there we were having the pastors and the teachers, most of them who were not Namibians, whites, but they were sympathetic to the cause and they understood. So they also help us really to keep focused on what we wanted to do.
What was the feeling like the day Namibia gained independence? How did you feel?
Oh, I felt so good. I felt so good, but I must say I was even feeling it is real. Especially when you read, take the issue of Congo. The UN was there, supervised election. What happened? Lumumba was killed. So those some of the things were coming at the back of my mind. And I remember sitting with the first Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ikomo Theo Ben, because the committee for the preparation of independence was then set up. And the shadow ministry of Foreign Affairs was then in charge of protocol. And I remember Ben saying, Netumbo, we must be very vigilant because we don't know what the Afrikaners are thinking. So we must really try to make sure they did not upset anything. So it was a celebration, but you were not sure whether the other part was really serious on what was happening or they might think of something else. It was a celebration, but one was cautious, and the history is the one which makes you to be cautious because such things happen. Like I gave an example of what happened in Congo with Lumumba.
Echoes from the Valley, recorded in locations across Africa and diaspora. It is Africa from African perspective. What is your African story? Echoes from the Valley, telling the African story.
How is Namibia's relationship with other countries, particularly African countries?
We have a very, very good relation with all the countries of Africa, and we we will continue to have that. We are saying that we are friend to all, enemy to none, knowing that what is guiding us is our national interest, is Africa. Let me tell you, there was a decision by the Organization of African Unity, that every African country should sing the AU anthem as well as host the African flag. I'm telling you, Namibia, at all official functions, we are singing the AU anthem alongside with the national anthem. And at all government buildings, you are finding the Namibian flag flying together with the AU flag. So we are really Pan-Africanists, and we believe on Pan-Africanism. Our founding president said it in many occasions that even if it means for us to give away some of our sovereignty for the sake of the African, we are ready to do it. So we value that. Africa needs to be a united continent, and the African people deserve the best. We really don't want this situation to continue. Africans, young people particularly, who are leaving the continent hoping for the best just to die in the high seas. And that's why African Union has decided to declare a decade for youth from 2018 to 2028 with focus on education, entrepreneurship, and empowerment of young people.
Echoes from the Valley, recorded in locations across Africa and diaspora. It is Africa from African perspective. What is your African story? Echoes from the Valley, telling the African story.
There are a lot of decisions that African Union is adopting which need to be implemented. Free movement of people, it's very critical. So Africans deserve the best when they are in the continent. There's a situation whereby you might find some Europeans enter some of our countries easier than Africans. That need to be addressed. Africans must feel comfortable in their own continent. The African Union has developed an African passport. It's not yet operational. We are seeing a slow process, but the AU Commission is working in the process. So if we can really resolve this issue of the free movement of people in the African continent, for me it's very critical for the African really to feel comfortable in their own continent. We suspect each other as Africans, which should not be. But I'm happy that decision has been taken. I'm so happy. And I can tell you, sooner rather than later, that's going to be implemented. What else do Africans want? If we agree on the free movement of people, and then we can trade freely among our continent, that is what African citizens want, and that is what African leaders have decided on, and we are going to do so. If you look at Agenda 2063, it's a dream that is going to be realized. And with these two decisions, I'm confident that we'll be able to make it, and the future generation of Africa, they will appreciate this generation for what they have done to take those two key decisions.
There's this perception out there that nothing is good and nothing is working in Africa, and that all African leaders are corrupt, all African leaders do not have the interest of their people and the continent at heart. A lot of people, the perception actually for some people is that Africa is actually one country, and it's a country of never-do-wells, it's a shithole country. And so Africa is painted in a negative light. True, there are some parts, some countries, there are some things going on in Africa, But, when the whole of Africa is lumped into one, and the perception out there is Africa is basically living in the 12th century and nothing good, no development. People would ask, okay, do you have aeroplanes in Africa? Like, we actually make jokes. We we flew on the raft and all of that. So why do you think we have that perception of Africa outside of Africa?
It's because of the fear. Because those who are outside the continent, who have been exploiting this continent for years, now they are seeing positive development. And in order to counter that, they want to work on the psychology of the African people and make the African people to consider their leaders is bad, and then start to behave like that. And then in the process undermines what is happening in the continent. Because if the African citizens accept what has been said there, they will come here, they will set up their NGOs who become opposition to our governments, to their leaders, and they do not even listen to what their leaders, to make an analysis. They just come in with those foreign ideas. In the process, they are drawing back what the African leaders are setting for themselves. So really, the only thing I can say is to say African citizens, African youth, they really to be very alert and to be themselves. For example, it's true there's a lot of skills of Africa that is being exported outside. Meanwhile, there's a lot of skills of non-Africans coming into Africa. So if you just look at the expatriates that we are using in Africa, and you compare with the Africans who are going out, you may even end, I think there was even a report to say the money Africa is spending on expatriates is even more than the money the Africans who went outside are getting there. So we just need to adjust this. You have. I remember at one time I was discussing. It was at the UN. They were discussing the African civil service or general civil servants, and how you can contract consultants. Now, you have what is called international consultant. I ask myself, what is international consultant? Now, if you are being consulted to do work in Namibia, when you know exactly what is your country's GDP, when you know exactly where your economy stands today, you want to give me the same rates you are getting in UK when your economy is not the same. And I was saying Africans, experts, they should think back and say 50 years from now, when the British economy was here, what were the consultants' fees? Because that is where the African or the Namibian economy today. But they were getting this, and then they did the work and brought the UK economy here. Why me, as an African expert, not accept to get that rate so that 5-10 years from now, I'll bring my country to give the same rate or even more rate than what is given in the UK. So it's really nationalism, patriotism, Pan-Africanism that has to come in. But those outside are realizing, because many Africans, there are also information on that. There are Africans who are starting to come back. Why? AU has even now decided to have the 5th region, which is African in the diaspora. Because we want this African in the diaspora to come back to the continent, even if not physically, to come and invest in the continent. not only money, but to invest their skills, their knowledge, so that they can bring up the African economy to the level of others. So those who are giving that picture as a poor people where there is a war, there is famine and so on, they are working in our psychology as Africans.
Echoes from the Valley, telling the African story.
We are telling our young people not to be misled and to be themselves and to come back to the continent and bring this continent to the level they want it to be. Nobody should tell us where we should bring our continent. We don't want to say we want to be Britain. We don't want to say we want to be America. We want to create a continent which the African people will be proud of.